Today is November 25th, 2019. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Tatton Manning in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
It's Tatton. Very odd name.
Oh, Tatton. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
I'm
That's fine.
sorry. Okay.
I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa. And when's your birthday?
October 9th, 1979.
Who is your father?
His name is Donald Wayne Manning.
And your mother?
Kathy Manning at the time. Now it's Heritage.
What's her maiden name?
Douglas.
Douglas. Okay.
It's Kathy with a C. Odd spelling. C-A-T-H-Y. Douglas.
When did you start school?
I started school in Dallas, Texas. Kindergarten.
Why did the family move to Dallas?
So my stepfather was in construction, and the early 80s was a time of really high inflation, and so they were building in Tulsa, and he found an opportunity to go work commercial construction in Dallas, so we moved.
Okay. And you graduated what high school?
Chelsea, Oklahoma,
And
1998.
So you moved to Chelsea.
Yep, moved to Chelsea when I was 13 years old and lived in Chelsea until I graduated high school.
Now, why did the family move to Chelsea?
My grandparents owned a feed mill in Chelsea called Phillips Feed Mill.
Okay.
And so my stepfather had been in construction for a long time, wanted to get out of that, and so he went to work in the feed mill. And so we moved back to my mom's home and lived there.
And you graduated what year?
1998.
1998.
Mm-hmm.
Who was your favorite teacher?
Miss Wilkes.
Miss Wilkes.
She was my English teacher. I talked about her this morning, actually.
Why was she your favorite?
She was very hard, but you always knew why. I almost failed her class as a sophomore because I was bound and determined not to read a book called The Scarlet Letter. And she very calmly said, you won't continue to defy me. She said, you'll start to fail and then you'll pick it up. And I got an 89 at the end of that year. So she really taught me a lesson to just get on with it. So.
And where did she teach?
She was an English teacher.
Was it in Chelsea or Dallas?
In Chelsea.
In Chelsea.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
She was high school English, so I had her for English 2 and English 4.
Okay. What did you do for recreation in high school?
Mostly sports, baseball, track, football. I didn't hunt at the time, but mostly sports. So, and then a lot of bicycling, and in the summers, Chelsea's a small enough town we could ride our bikes into town and go to the pool, and but that's mostly sports.
Okay. So what did you do after high school?
I had a baseball scholarship to Oklahoma Wesleyan in Bartlesville, and so I went there and did 4 years, got my degree in 4 years in business, met my wife there, I got saved there, and changed my whole life. So good place. I'm very, very happy that I made that choice.
Okay. And so after you got your degree, what did you do?
So I got approached by a guy that was 2 years older than me. He called me the day before I was going to graduate. I had a job lined up with REC, Rural Electric Cooperative in Bonita. It wasn't a great job. I wasn't excited about it, but it was a job. And so he called me and said, I work at an auto dealership, and I'm in finance, and the store's growing very quickly. And we need more people, and I think you would be excellent at it. And I'd never actually set foot in a car dealership before. I didn't know anything about it. And so I went over, and it seemed like an exciting place. There was a lot of energy, and so I agreed to do that. So I went to work in the car business.
Okay. And what car dealership was it?
So it's a place called Mays County Chrysler. In fact, they stole a bunch of money from Chrysler, and they're out of business. And I only lasted about a year there.
Yeah.
Not a great spot. In fact, the guy that hired me now works for me in one of our stores.
Okay.
So
okay.
he's a good man.
Yes. Okay. Now, when did you become interested in the military?
Good question. So during high school, the recruiters would come by, and I never really thought about it seriously. I knew that I was going to go to school. I would be the first person in my family, my immediate family, to go, and so it was always kind of the path that I had. But I was a senior in college when the World Trade Center was bombed in 2001, and that really affected me. So I was,
How did that affect you?
you know, there's some anger, there's some realization that there are bad people in the world, and you know, I grew up town of 2,000 people. I went to a Christian university, and so you know, you're sort of sheltered, and so but you realize there's real evil and it needs to be confronted, and so that, you know, it sort of hits you in the face, and so I went on, got my degree, went to work, and then when Iraq started in the spring of 2003, that really, I was about to be married. We didn't have children, and I already talked to my wife, and she was okay with me looking at that. And so at that point, I got really serious about joining. I didn't know which branch, and this is all personal preference, but for me, the Marine Corps and the Army are really the only two that kind of fit me. And then from there, the Army, in order to go to officer candidate school, you had to first go to basic training, and I thought that would give me good experience compared to going directly to officer candidate school like you do in the Marine Corps, and so I chose the Army. And so it took me a while to get accepted, and I went in, finally got, they accepted me in late 2004, but the class didn't start until July of 2005.
So when did you join the Army?
July 19th, 2005. So that's the day I left.
Where did you go for basic training?
I went to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Fort Benning, Georgia.
Bravo Company, 247 Infantry. You'll never forget it.
Yes. Mine's Bravo 33, Best by Test Drill Sergeant.
There you go.
Tell me about basic.
Basic training was very different than what I would say the movies are. So I thought we would get on a plane, we get on a bus, we get off, we start immediately. No, you go to something called reception, which is the very worst time a soldier has ever spent. And so it is, from my experience, it was 6 days of lines and getting yelled at mildly, a few push-ups here and there, mostly just lines. I remember we went in to get our shots, and if you've been in the country and you've ever painted, use a big glove for painting like pipe fences. Well, there were soldiers on each side of the door with these gloves. They dipped their hands into gloves that had, or they dipped their hands into vats that had alcohol, and they rubbed our entire arms. And I believe I got 7 shots in the next 2 or 3 minutes. And so you just realize you're a number, and you're not a big deal if you thought you were. And so that was my entrance, and I would have done anything to get out of the in-processing part. But in basic training, they equally punish everyone. You are responsible for your brother. You are your brother's keeper. And the way to make somebody do a better job is to punish everybody within 10 feet of him, and then they will self-police. And that was a real, you know, I had been on teams before where your weakest link hurts you, but this was different. And so you realize that you truly are only as good as that weakest person, and you build each other up. You find out who you can trust. You learn a lot about people, and so it's interesting because most people say, well, as an officer you could just give an order and it's done. I'm like, sort of, but if you really want people to work with you, you have to learn about them. You have to only ask them things you would do, and then you have to be able to make mistakes and then take care of you. And so if you just give orders, they won't ever take care of you. But I learned a lot about that in basic training even. So I was made a squad leader about 10 days in, and the squad leaders had been fired every 5 or 6 hours before then. And so when I got that role, I wasn't sure if it would last long, but I was the squad leader from then until we got done. And so you really, you know, you've got 10 guys that you just have to take care of, and you know, it's managing people. So
what type of training did you have in basic?
So everything from drill and ceremony, which is how to march, how to properly hold a weapon, how to fire a weapon safely, how to shoot with open sights at 300 meters and be deadly. You learn first aid, you learn field problems, you learn how to navigate with a compass and a map, you learn how to navigate with just a map. You learn that you can do a lot more than you think because you can go farther without sleep than you thought, you can carry more weight. For me, I learned I can stand with my arms behind my back for 3 hours, and you just stand there and stare at a guy. So the guy that I stood at, his name is Jerry Jones. He's one of my very best friends to this day. So
What weapon did you have?
M16A4.
M-
So that would be, so the M2 is a little smaller version of it, but the M16A4, I'm sorry, the M4 is a smaller version of that, but M16A4.
Okay. Go on bivouac?
We did, yeah, we did many times. Spent a lot of time in the field, so we spent 23 or 24 days out in the field. I learned how bad MREs are, and you learn how to share and to trade and to barter with those. Our drill sergeants were funny. They would take all of our candy, make us put it in a pile, and then they would eat it in front of us. And so it became kind of funny.
What's your most vivid memory of basic?
For me, it was a night live fire exercise. So I think everybody does them. I'm sure that you got to do one, but you have to low crawl. So the training piece is probably low crawling. There's some pain involved because you're crawling through gravel and rocks, and then it's understanding what it's like to be fired on. And so they're probably 15 feet up in the air. You probably couldn't jump and hit one, but the way they have the course designed, they're firing live machine guns right over your head. And it's exhilarating, and it's interesting because no one will tell you this, but when you think you're about to die and you're getting shot at, is actually the most exciting time in your life, and it's hard to explain, but that was that first time you sort of felt that. So that would probably be the most vivid memory.
Basic lasted how long?
10 weeks, I think.
10 weeks.
So a little longer, and so that would include the 6 days in reception.
Okay. So from Fort Benning, where'd you go?
So from Fort Benning, I went to officer basic course at Fort Sill because I was going to be a field artillery officer, and so it's interesting. I asked to go all over the world, and they sent me right back to Oklahoma. But Fort Sill's not like the rest of Oklahoma.
Yes.
So.
Now, how did officers basic compare to basic training?
Interesting. So basic training. I'm sorry. I need to go back. I went to officer candidate school.
Okay.
So
okay.
yes. So I went to officer candidate school. So we graduated on a Friday. Saturday morning, I reported officer candidate school. That's in Fort Benning as well.
Okay.
And so my mistake.
Now, how did that compare with basic?
So very different. In officer candidate school, they give you problems that you probably can't solve in the amount of time they give them to you, and then they leave you alone to fail. And so you have platoons of about 30. They assign a platoon leader, a platoon sergeant, and then you assign your different squad leaders. You try to get these problems done. And then generally the first 5 or 6 weeks they grade you on how close you came to not failing. And so it's really a different setup. It's a lot more pain than basic training. You know, you would think basic training would be challenging, but it truly is basic training. You're taking people off the streets from Michigan and Florida and California, showing them what it's like to act as one. You're giving them some basic skills. You're hardening them in a small way. But the officer candidate school, the runs were a lot longer. The rucks were a lot heavier. I remember our first one, they gave a really odd packing list. 1 sock, 1 towel, a specific toothbrush, a specific this, and then at the end of it they made us open them all up, and invariably somebody made a mistake because they weren't properly checked, and so that platoon leader, that squad leader, that platoon sergeant, they all got to do that ruck march the next day on Sunday, and so that was a really big wake-up call, and so just the level of scrutiny was much higher. It was much more classroom work, much more theory. And so it was good, and then peer evaluations were big there. And in basic training, there were no. It's whatever the drill sergeant thought, however they graded you. your peer evaluations were huge in OCS. The bottom 5 people got recycled. And so that was a big wake-up call, because after our first peer evaluations came out, they called out the bottom 5 and they said, you'll get to do this all over again if you don't get better. So that was, anyway.
Now, what's your most vivid memory of OCS?
Ooh. OCS, most vivid memory. I was late for formation once, and it was late in OCS, and I was not in a role of responsibility, but it was when we were able to go off post, and I was off post and got stuck in traffic because I didn't plan to get back early enough, and I was late. And so I caused the platoon leader at the time and the platoon sergeant at the time and my squad leader at the time and me a bunch of pain, and I hated that.
Yes.
And so I didn't ever want to be that guy, and I was that guy that day.
So, officer's basic.
Yep. So graduate OCS, go to officer basic course in Fort Sill. Manual gunnery was harder than any college course I ever had, except for business law. And manual gunnery is very challenging, because you're dealing with the curvature of the earth, the humidity, the temperature. You're dealing with how many times that gun has been shot, because literally metal shavings come out with every round. You're dealing with different elevations and terrains and different wind at different elevations, and so manual gunnery was challenging. But I had a very good instructor for my manual gunnery. He was an Army officer. Most people don't know, but Officer Artillery School is combined Marines and Army at the same time. My forward observer course was a Marine captain. His name was B.A. Laxton, and Captain Laxton was an amazing runner, and he ran us into the ground. But one day a week he would let us do sports. He sucked at sports, and we would punish him that day. And so anyway, that was a lot of fun. But Field Artillery School was a challenge, but it was good.
What guns?
So 105s mostly.
Okay.
Because you can do all of your manual gunnery with 105, but it's small enough that we could actually go out and learn to shoot them.
Okay.
And so, but you learn things about multiple launch rocket systems, the 155 towed, the 155 self-propelled, and then the 777 gun was coming in, which is a lighter version of the old 155.
Okay.
So we did learn on those, but most of it was on the 105 because it's more basic and it's more uniform across the Army.
Okay. What different rounds did you have?
Oh, so you've got HE rounds, you've got white phosphorus rounds, and then you have different fuses for those rounds. So for instance, you can have an HE round, but you can make it a high explosive round, but instead of detonating when it hits the ground, you can make it detonate in the air. And so, because if it detonates on the ground, you're going to kill the guys in about a 50-meter circle there, but if it detonates in the air, you can kill a whole bunch more. And so we learned about illumination rounds, we learned about different GPS guided rounds, so lots of different ways to shoot it. Also there's rocket assist, so you can go out from say 9 miles to 14 miles, and so really increase your range.
Okay. Now, did you train as a forward observer?
Trained as a forward observer and on the guns, and the forward observers course was really interesting. So we got to do a digital version of it, and then we went out and actually called in rounds. And that was a lot more fun. So I was better at maps, better at kind of figuring out where I was than a lot of people, and so I was better at that early. I was just fine with the manual gunnery, but I was a good forward observer, and so that was a lot of fun. And
Ever worried about a short round?
You're always worried about that, but if you worry about that. So there's things you can control and there's things you can't control. And if you worry about all the stuff you can't control, you never get out of bed.
Okay. What causes a short round?
Well, there's a lot of things that can cause that. So they can make mistakes in the powder they use. They can make mistakes in the elevation, the trajectory they use. You can have problems with powder, problems with the gun, but a lot of human error.
Now, in the 105, is it fixed ammunition?
No, so you use bags of powder.
Okay, okay.
So they call them white and green bags. And so So you put different bags of powder in with a cartridge. It almost looks like a toy. It's a big can. And so you load it up with the different amounts of different powder bags, and then different angle of fire, and you can go long, short, low trajectory, or high.
Okay. And lasted how long?
So officer basic course, got there in January, left in June.
Again,
So about 6 months.
What's your most vivid memory?
So this was actually a fun one. So we got to practice calling for fire with a B-2 bomber. And a B-2 looks like a massive wing. And when that thing, we got to play with it, they'd come over at 400 or 500 feet and do simulated bombing runs. And that was really fun. So, and that was during a really bad field problem. We'd been out there a long time. We had bad weather. And so this was kind of the end of it. So it was a very pleasant day.
Yes. So from Fort Sill, where'd you go?
So actually I got stationed at Fort Sill.
Okay.
I asked to go to Germany. I asked to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I asked to go to Hawaii. I asked to go to Fort Hood, Texas, and Hawaii. And they sent me to Fort Sill. And so the Army does that. But I went to a multiple launch rocket systems battalion at Fort Sill.
What unit were you attached to?
So 218 Field Artillery. They were with the 75th Fires Brigade, but I was only with them for about 3 months. They came down on orders for a very short trip to Afghanistan, and they didn't need as many people. And so the people that were the newest to the unit got assigned to another unit that was going called Charlie 26 Tab, and they were attached to the 2nd 231 Field Artillery from the 4th Brigade Combat Team 82nd Airborne.
Would you repeat that again?
Yeah, so 2nd 321st Fires Battalion, and we were attached to the 4th Brigade Combat Team 82nd Airborne Division. So we went to Afghanistan with the 82nd.
Okay.
And so what we were was a radar battery, and that radar would track incoming rounds, and then we were attached to the guns there, and we could give a fix for where the mortars and rockets came from, and then our guns would fire back.
Okay.
And so we were along the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
When you got orders for Afghanistan, what was your reaction?
I joined the Army to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, and so I was neither happy nor sad. My wife had gotten pregnant a couple of months before and had recently had a miscarriage, and so we were dealing with that. So we had a little bit of a decision to make if we were going to try again or if we were going to wait. We decided to wait.
Okay.
I didn't. You know, there were, as a percentage, very small soldiers were dying, but it's a very real possibility,
Yes.
and so I didn't want to leave a widow with a child. So we decided to wait. So that was, you had to think about that. But in terms of being happy, sad, it was what I joined for. It's what we trained for.
Now, when did you leave for Afghanistan?
February the 7th, 2007.
2007.
Yep.
Tell me about going to Afghanistan.
It's kind of a weird trip. So I always thought we'd get on an Air Force jet, fly over, they'd drop us right off. Just like basic training, it's different. So there was a government contracted airplane, Omni Air is who it was, and so we got on a DC-10. It's a big plane. They picked us up at Fort Sill. We were carrying all of our weapons, no ammo yet, but all of our weapons. We got on that plane, flew to Indianapolis, picked up another unit, flew from there to Cologne, Germany, and we were ready to go over to Kyrgyzstan, which is where you go into Afghanistan from. But it was 22 below zero with ice on all the runways in Kyrgyzstan. So they bussed us an hour and a half south to a town called Bitburg, Germany. And they had set up an air base there that had space. And so every night at 11 p.m. we'd get on our bus and we would sit there for about an hour. And then they would tell us to get back off and the weather was too bad. And so we did that 7 days. And so we finally got to Kyrgyzstan. We were there about 15 hours.
Now Kurdistan.
So Kyrgyzstan is north and east of Afghanistan. It's right on the northwest side of China.
Okay.
And so it's a country that allowed us to have air bases to go into and
Okay.
to go into Afghanistan. And so the Air Force has a base there. And so then we got on a C-17 and flew into Afghanistan from there.
And you landed where?
Bagram Air Base. Bagram Air Base.
Bagram.
Bagram. It's, to my knowledge, it's the biggest air base in Afghanistan.
Okay.
And it's a nasty place. It's an old Soviet air base, and the runway's massive. But I remember, so a C-17 is a massive airplane, the second largest airplane the Air Force has, I believe. You could play basketball in that thing. And so we take off, and there's about 150 seats in the front. There's some cargo in the back. And we're just flying. It's about a 3-hour flight. Marked my watch. I knew when we were getting close. And we got close, the guy starts doing some amazing maneuvers, stuff that I would not think this big jet could do. And so we're turning right hard, we're turning left, we're dropping, we're settling back up. And then we finally turn really hard, settle back, and we touch down. The guy did an amazing landing. And so they did that so nobody would shoot rockets at us when we were coming in. So, but that was a fun landing.
When you first got off the airplane, what was your reaction to the country?
So I thought the country, I thought it would be different when we got off. I was prepared that it would be a lot more exciting. It was very boring. It was at dusk, very, very cold. And so you didn't see much. Obviously, there's no lights at night. And so, and Bagram's a big air base. It's a pretty safe place. They would get rockets shot in from time to time and mortars, but not a lot of what you would call close contact. And so it was kind of business as usual. We went and got our equipment, and then we flew in helicopters out to the bases that we were going to be on the border.
And you were at what base?
So I was at a few different bases. My first 3 months I was at a place called Orgun E, Orgun-E, and it was in eastern Afghanistan, about 25 miles from the Pakistan border. And then our battery commander got attached to another unit, and then I got the battery. And so I was responsible for 4 different sections of guys, and we were right on the border, and we just had different stations, different little bases. The smallest had 90, the biggest was probably 150.
Okay.
And so,
what guns did you have?
105s.
105s.
Yep. So we had a radar section with 105s there, and we fired a lot of rounds. Mm-hmm. And so they were very active places.
Who identified your targets?
So they were identified either from points that they thought there would be people, and so we did some harassment and interdiction fire for Army infantry units that were out moving through an area. So we would fire before they got there. When troops got into contact, the forward observers would call back, and then when people shot at us and we could get fixes on where they were, we shot back. And so it was interesting as we would kill those guys, you would have new crews that would replace them, and they really sucked at shooting mortars and rockets at first. They would be 200, 300 yards off, and then as they kept shooting, they would get better, they would get better, they would get better. But the more they shot, we would get them.
Yes.
And
yes.
so then you would have to find a new replacement. Mm-hmm. So I always liked it when the bad guys were shooting.
What type of quarters did you have?
So mostly tents.
Okay.
And then so just tents, and then as you would go to a place that had more people, it'd be tents with sandbags around it, so it would almost be kind of a fortified tent. And then there were places where they had what we call connexes, and so it's like storage containers that work very well if you put sandbags up and over the top. And so it's just kind of you make a bunker where you can. So it was not built up at all where I was.
Okay. What was your average day?
So for me, average day, wake up early. Wherever I was, I'd have breakfast with the soldiers. And sometimes that was MRE. Sometimes, depending on where I was, it could be hot chow. It could be honey buns, just depending on what it was. And then, I had email. And so there would be different reports I would need to send. And so, there would be maybe leave for soldiers, because during our tours, beginning at the 3-month mark and ending about the 10-month mark, our guys would rotate in and out for 2 weeks. So they would go home for 2 weeks and come back. And so we had to make sure that we planned to have soldiers replace those guys. If we had medical issues, we worked through that. And then just going, we did different drills to make sure we were ready to go, make sure that everybody had the equipment they needed, things like that.
Okay. Now, how were you resupplied with ammunition, rations, whatever?
All with airdrops.
Airdrops.
Yep.
Okay.
So we would have, now sometimes with ammunition they would bring it in with trucks, and so, but mostly airdrops.
Airdrops, helicopters.
Helicopters.
Okay.
Every now and then, so at one of the big bases they would bring C-130s over and then drop them with parachutes, but you had to have kind of a more open space for that, and so most of ours was brought in via airdrops and helicopter.
Okay. Have any contact with the local population?
Some, yes. So as I was out doing different patrols, I got to meet people also. If we needed things, there were a few civilians that could bring things in. And then also with the Afghan army, I had some contact.
Okay.
So mostly they were relatively nice people. I'm going to offend some. I didn't think the work ethic was very strong. And the challenging thing for us as Americans is, we're kind of, we're proud to be Americans. And whether you're from New York or LA or Texas or North Dakota, we share a similarity. And the Afghans are very tribal. And they're think of it like Colorado. You can go 10 miles over a mountain and you'll never see that other side. You only stay on your side. And those tribes are very, very close-knit. And so they don't really care about the tribe over the mountain range. And so, for instance, if we were building a road, you would bring the tribal leaders in and they would be mad over who would get the road first. Or, and so we had a hard time with that. So they didn't have that concept of, I'm an Afghan, I'm from Afghanistan. It was, I'm this tribe, I'm that tribe. So it was challenging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You were in Afghanistan how long?
Year and a couple weeks.
Okay. What's your best memory of Afghanistan?
Better stars than you've ever seen. So, very peaceful at night. There are no lights, very quiet, and so very, very peaceful.
What's your worst memory of Afghanistan? You okay? It's on.
Okay, my worst days. Had a couple of them. A guy that I really respected and liked. He was a master sergeant named Art Lilly. He got killed by some guys who were posing as Pakistani military. I walked up and he was trying to help him with a problem, and they shot him. And of course, we got those guys, but I really, really liked him. He really tried to take care of all the soldiers, and he was just a good guy. I was a young lieutenant at the time, and master sergeants are a young lieutenant's best friend because they know how to do all the stuff. They've been there. And my stepfather told me, he was in the Navy, and he said, if you'll figure out which NCOs you can trust and listen to them, then they'll guide you, make you a much better officer. And so I took that to heart. And then another guy, Jeremy Green, he got killed. They were out on patrol, and they came back, and one of his soldiers set his weapon down on the ground, and it went off and shot him twice in the throat. And you could hear him trying to breathe. It was a pretty bad day.
How long were you in Afghanistan?
Just a little over a year.
Okay.
Yep. I came back on Valentine's Day of 2008.
Okay. Tell me about coming home.
It was it was a lot of fun. A little bit of a funny story there. So I had cigars ordered. It takes a long time to get cigars in Afghanistan, but there was an NCO that I already knew that could get them, and so I got some Cuban cigars when you weren't supposed to get Cuban cigars, and so I had them sitting there for us, and I gave all the soldiers in the unit a cigar, and our airplane was supposed to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I never saw a Navy guy in Afghanistan, because you don't need a lot of Navy guys in Afghanistan, except they were handling customs, and so they literally made us strip down to our underwear. It was February in the mountains in Afghanistan. Now we were in a building, but it wasn't heated. Apparently guys had been taking stuff they weren't supposed to back, and so anyway, they were doing that. But when we were all done, I gave the guys cigars when we were waiting on our airplane to come get us. And my first name is Tatton. It's a very odd name. And one of our soldiers that I had lived with, slept with, ate with, suffered with, he said, "Hey sir, what is your first name?" And I mean, I knew him, I knew his family, I knew him inside and out. I told him my first name. We all laughed about that. So, but that was good. Flew back through Kyrgyzstan, except we were there like 13 hours in and out, and then back through Leipzig, Germany, and then straight back to Fort Sill. And that was a lot of fun because they have a police escort. You're running through every light. They're not making you wait for anybody. And it was kind of funny. There were a couple ladies that flashed us. Of course, they knew we'd been in Afghanistan or Iraq a long time, and so that was funny. But got back, handed in our weapons, and then our family was there, and so that was really a good time. My wife had asked me. She goes, "What do you want?" So I'd like Chick-fil-A, and I want to feel carpet on my feet. And so we did that, and that was really fun. It was really fun to be home. I had broken a foot about 2 weeks before. I knew it was hurt bad, but I laced up my boot real tight and wore 2 socks. Didn't tell anybody because you don't want to get stuck in Afghanistan. Yes. And so the next morning, and they must know this happens because the next morning they put us through a physical, and they said, "Where are you hurting? What's going on?" I said, "My foot hurts real bad," and so they thought it was like tendonitis. It turned out it was broken in 2 places. So that was good to be home.
Mm-hmm. Did you come back a changed person?
Oh yeah. There's obviously you can tell there's things I don't handle as well as I would like to, but there's a lot of things about me that are better. Mm-hmm. I used to make a lot of really quick decisions on things that you probably shouldn't make quick decisions on, and I was a little more, I would say confident, some would say arrogant, and actually I have a much higher ability than I used to, but I think I'm more steady. I can handle problems a lot better. I run a business with 330 employees, and I never could have done that and handled the ups and downs and the problems before the Army. And Afghanistan was, it's interesting, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, 4th of July, it's a day like any other. You go. And so that, it steadies you if you let it. So I can do a lot more than I used to be able to do.
So what'd you do when you got back from Afghanistan?
Well, I was in the Army for another year. Trained a unit to go.
At Fort Sill?
At Fort Sill,
okay.
Yep. And then I met a really good warrant officer. And if you ever want to know the truth, go ask a chief, go ask a warrant officer, because they've generally been NCOs. They work with officers. They really know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so a good CW3 that I met in Afghanistan said, "Are you going to make this a career?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I said, I got in to serve, and I want to get out. I think that as an officer, you can either be a good soldier or you can be a good husband. You can't be both, because the Army takes your life. And so he said, well, if you go past one service tour, or one commitment, there's got to be something in it for you. So either stay in or get out, and if you stay in past one, you need to do a career, because it's just, you'll be so far in. So I got out in February of 2009. I got out as a captain, and I went, got my master's degree, and used my GI Bill, and so it was a good thing for me.
Now, when did you come to Bartlesville?
So I came to Bartlesville in March of 2014. I bought what used to be Malone Motor Company, and it became the first Patriot dealership. And now, as we sit, I have 5, and I'm maybe about to do 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it's grown, and a lot of that is based upon what I learned in the Army.
Yes. Would you join the Army again?
Yes, and I would. I have 2 boys, and I would. I want them to as well.
Yes. I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction.
Okay.
The first one is basic training.
Patience.
OCS.
Pain.
Officers basic.
Study.
Artillery.
Power.
Afghanistan.
Struggle.
U.S. Army.
Timeless.
George Bush.
You shouldn't have joined the Air National Guard. Pretty good. Pretty good.
How do you want to be remembered?
As a good father.
Anything else you want to talk about? Well, sir, this is an excellent interview.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.
And again, this is November 25th, 2019. My name is Joe Todd. This is the interview with
Tatton Manning.
Tatton Manning in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.